So take a look. Here's the latest ESPN mock draft from Jonathan Givony and Jeremy Wu. After Wembanyama at 1, they have Brandon Miller going 2nd to Charlotte, and then Scoot Henderson to Portland at 3. You can see the rest of the mock draft here and more on ESPN.com. So joining us now is our draft expert, Jonathan Givony. Zach Lowe is here, senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski as well. So, Jonathan, I want to start with you here. The Spurs, they are expected to select Victor Wembanyama with the first pick in the draft. So it feels like it all really starts at 2. How do you see the 2nd and 3rd pick shaken out here?
Malika, on the night of the lottery, I would have told you Brandon Miller is the clear favorite to be the number 2 pick in the draft. Based on what the front office there had seen from his games and from the video, they were very, very high on Brandon Miller. Scoot Henderson has done a very good job of positioning himself to make that more of a conversation in the Charlotte front office with the workout that he had. He came in phenomenal shape. He brought excellent intensity. His shot-making ability was evident. The explosiveness. His interview was very good. Brandon Miller followed him, was in there yesterday in Charlotte. Not a terrible workout, but not quite to the level of Scoot Henderson. He isn't in the same shape as Scoot Henderson. Brandon Miller is coming off an illness. He had mononucleosis in April, so he hasn't been training at the same level of Scoot Henderson. And so I'm told that it's I would say it leans Brandon Miller at this stage. Scoot Henderson very much in the conversation at number 2.
Woj?
That's right. I think Brandon Miller's bigger body of work is certainly going to be important here. I think organizations certainly, they're looking at the season Miller had, the position he plays, the belief among a lot of teams. This is going to be a multi-time All-Star. But Scoot Henderson certainly has that potential too. But I would, agree with Jonathan. Still leaning Brandon Miller. I would have Brandon Miller's name in pencil in Charlotte, perhaps not quite pen yet.
Zach, you were actually in the lottery room for the drawing. What do you see for the 2nd and 3rd pick?
I think Portland is the most interesting team in the draft, and as much as any team in the top 5 or 10 kind of holds the keys to both the draft and their own future. Do they care who Charlotte picks at number 2, or they think Charlotte is going to pick at number 2? Does that impact their thinking? And the interesting question to me is there's this idea that Portland can make the pick and take another young player, but that would mean trading Damian Lillard, or they can keep Damian Lillard, but that would mean trading the pick for veteran help. And I'm not so sure for the Blazers that it's that simple. I think there could be a middle path for them where they just say to Damian, look, this prospect we can get at number 3 is just too good. This is too great of an opportunity. We moved up in the draft. We've got to take advantage of it. We'll continue to build around you, maybe re-sign Jeremy Grant, try to bring in some free agents, try to make some trades, and at least for a little while, navigate that middle path. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. Obviously, they could do anything, but I think they're the most interesting situation.
Woj, I'm curious, what are you hearing about teams potentially looking up to move up into the top 10?
Yeah, and add one thing on to what Zach said. I don't know right now that there's a player out there that the Blazers could justify trading for, who's available, that they could get at number 3 that would justify giving up a potential all-star level player at that spot. And if that player doesn't become available, they're going to be very comfortable picking at 3. And as for teams who might move up, now the Jazz are a team that are already in the top 10. They're at number 9. They pick at 9, 16, and 28. And they're a team that potentially could move up higher than 9. They have the ability to package those picks. And if there's a player on the board that they don't think is going to get to them, they're in position to do that. You look at Oklahoma City at number 12. Now, that's their pick in this draft, but they have so many future picks that, again, they're the kind of teams that can give someone at 4, 5, 6, 7 something to think about getting more picks, getting some depth over perhaps the quality of staying in that spot and choosing a player.
Yeah, Jonathan, is there a player in your mind that you're looking at that maybe could move up this draft board?
One player that every team is studying right now is Kobe Bufkin. He has really helped himself in this pre-draft process just by not being available. everybody's trying to get him into their gym. They're trying to get him into workouts. They're trying to interview him. They're trying to get his medical. And he has made himself sparse. So teams are starting to speculate. Does Kobe Bufkin have a promise? Does he know where he's going to be drafted already? You hear speculation about Washington at 8, Utah at 9, Oklahoma City at 12, and, probably worst case, Toronto at 13. He has positioned himself very well in this process. Where teams are looking at his body of work, the last 10 or 12 games of the season where he really excelled at Michigan, and he has a chance to really shake things up on draft nights.
Officially 1 week away from the 2023 draft. Jonathan, thank you so very much. Your schedule is incredibly busy right now. We appreciate you taking the time. He is going to be on NBA Today a whole lot coming up in the next week. The Mavericks, right, they essentially tanked their way into the 10th pick. What are they weighing to do with that pick, Woj?
Dallas is very open to trading that 10th pick. But what they'd like to do is continue to get players in for workouts, get guys in front of them, and really understand who might be available to them at Dallas at number 10. There could be a player that they really love or two players they might really, really like that on draft night could find their way to them at 10 that might make more sense than a trade. So I think you gather up all that information. And I think typically for a team drafting where they are at 10, it's probably going to be a deal on the board, right? When all of a sudden, as the draft's playing out, somebody behind them gets very eager for a player who all of a sudden is there at 10. And then perhaps there's a deal to make unless you trade for a veteran player ahead of the draft, and 10 is part of that. And certainly the center position's important. I think for this Dallas team, they'll be on the market for that in conversations with other teams. But I think it'll be a while before we know whether Dallas knows if they're going to keep 10 or move on from it, but very open to it.
Vince, what would you like to see happen there?
I think they should move the pick, get him a veteran, because you have to find a guy who, well, first of all, you have to find a guy who can play with Luka. I mean, you have to find the right star player who's okay with not having the ball in his hands all the time, because Luka likes the ball in his hand, but Luka also has to make some sacrifices as well. I've definitely heard John Collins' name thrown around, who's a rebounder, shot blocker athlete, who opens the floor up for Luka to play his game. So I'd like to see them move the pick. I mean, like Woj said, you just have to be patient and see what's there as far as, the way the draft plays out. But I think at the end of the day, they'll move it.
Well, let's stick in the West here. Another team that unexpectedly missed the postseason was the Pelicans. So what's their mindset with the draft a week away?
Yeah, the Pelicans at 14. Listen, this is a team that has fared very well in the draft in recent years. They have done a great job at the top of the lottery, and certainly further down, first round, second round. And so I think they're very comfortable picking at number 14. I think this is a team that needs to get healthy. Again, they can add low-cost depth for themselves at 14. So you never know if somebody becomes available like anybody else, that they might move up at. But I think organizations who have a very good draft track record, like the Pelicans, I think they typically believe they don't have to give up multiple assets to move around on the draft board.
Perk, what would you do if you're David Griffin?
Well, one, I would trade Zion to Portland to get the number 3 pick. That's the first thing. And at number 14, I would keep my pick. I think, like Woj just talked about, they have done an excellent job for us drafting great talent. David Griffin has one of the best eyes in the game for us evaluating talent. But I would definitely consider trading Zion and getting the number 3 pick from Portland, because I believe that it's going to be Scoot that they're going to get.
Zach, where do you fall on this?
I mean, I think it's interesting to flip the question around and ask, would Portland do that? The number 3 pick is a really valuable pick, and Zion has played 100 games and change in 4 seasons. I think that's actually more of a risky proposition for Portland, or at least more of a debate for them than people might think when they first hear Zion for a draft pick. They've got to do that. I think the Blazers would have a lot of long meetings about whether that's actually worth the risk, whether they can get Zion to stay healthy and in shape. Those are big big uncertainties right now.
Well, Zach, not really, because the one person that they have to consider keeping healthy, keeping happy, if you're the Portland Trail Blazers, is Damian Lillard. And I understand of Zion history for his health, but if you could get him on the team, that shows some type of urgency that you're trying to contend and trying to better the roster to please Damian Lillard so that you won't be having to trade him on draft night.
All fair, Perk, all fair. I'm just saying I don't think it's as much of a no-brainer as people might think when they see that name in highlights on the billboard, because the frank reality of Zion Williamson so far is he doesn't play. He doesn't play. The talent doesn't matter if it doesn't translate to actual games. Now, if he stays healthy, he's an all-NBA player. We all know that, and that would be for Portland to determine what needs to happen for Zion to stay on the floor. Can we do that? Is our medical team able to do that? Those are all big questions, because that number 3 pick, if you poll around the league, I think this number 3 pick is a little more valuable than even the average number 3 pick, because it's either going to be Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson. So I think that pick is more valuable than, again, the 3 pick might be in an average draft.
Well, to put a bow on this for us, a week away, what do you have your eye on as we inch towards the draft?
Listen, I think certainly the trade market, built around Bradley Beal, how that impacts draft night. If there is a deal to be done, does Washington want to get another pick in this draft? Is it future drafts? And certainly, I think the very top history shows very few teams are trading out of the top 3. And I think especially, we talk about it, the new collective bargaining agreement, having young talent on controllable contracts, especially in a market like Portland that is not going to attract big free agents. It is with great risk that you would trade out of there, especially if you think there's a potential all-star player down the road that you're going to get as a teenager at number 3.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.